Hey everybody, thank you for joining us on the FareCompare video podcast, episode number 27. That'd be what, I just got back from Cancun, so that'd be 27, I guess. Or that'd be 20 plus 7. I guess 27 would be 27 anyway. This podcast, we're going to be talking about a few news topics, some summer flight stuff. We had a little article for USA Today, and we have some dates to share with you and some cutoff for cheaper vacation flights. We also have some questions for some consumers, talk a little bit about a new blog post, which includes some videos related to packing of certain items. I'll tell you a bit about my story with packing just recently anyway. So joining me today is our editor from the site at FareCompare.com, and McDermott.
Hey, Rick. Talk about serendipity. I was just out looking at, I had to go out the front door, and as sometimes happens, there's brochures from real estate people, and they are often filled with these helpful hints and tips and things. This one says, Rick Cini, Chief Executive of FareCompare.com, blah, 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 and it goes on and it gives the best dates to fly, some of which we are going to be talking about in just a moment.
So you got it via snail mail. That's even better. I like that. Yeah, no, look, I mean, here we are. We're heading into the summer travel season. I know a lot of people are still yet to go on their spring breaks. I just got back from mine last week in Cancun and had a great time. The weather actually turned out to be much better than it was expected earlier in the month. And I know a lot of people will be coming back home and going, well, I need to plan my summer trip. And there's certainly some dates you need to be aware of. We'd written an article back earlier in the year about sort of the magical dates. Some of those dates are coming nigh upon us in May, but they're still the one in June. We have that June 14th deadline, and sort of we also have the May 17th deadline as well coming up. So I think you had some a few different examples. For example, LA to New York on June 7th is a little over 360, and then departing 1 week later, it's a little over 430.
Right. We priced out some of these, and you know what we did? We went to FareCompare.com, and that's how we found these flights, and also found examples that matched up perfectly with what you said, which is June 9th is the last day to fly to get the slightly better fares than you would June 10th, which essentially starts the prime season for summer. And Dallas to Phoenix, it jumped from $88 round trip, which is actually such a deal. And then if you depart a week later, $156 round trip. So that's almost twice as much. And we found this, Atlanta, San Francisco. Now, as I know you'd be the first one to point out, you're not going to find this on every single flight, but it's sort of a general guide. It's
a general trend, and basically what happens is the yield management systems of these computers for the airlines, they pretty much know seasonally when the traffic starts to bump up, what dates they start to bump up, when kids get out of school, which means traffic bumps up for travel those days, and that's why these days are important. Now for certain types of tickets, like international tickets, especially transoceanic ones, they actually have seasonal rules on them. So you'll have to, these days sort of roughly correspond with each airline season. Not every airline's exactly the same, but they're usually only a few days apart if they're different. So these dates are really important if you want to save some money. Of course, we have that other date at the end of August, the last week in August as well, that you want, if you can fly after that time frame, you'll save some money on the peak summer rates.
But if you planning to go to Europe, if you could do it in the earlier part of May rather than the latter part of May, you'll save hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, no, it's hundreds of dollars, and the same thing happens in June as well. So it's one of these things where I know the reason it's there is because your kids are in school or whatnot, but those that are flexible and they can do it, they should absolutely be doing it.
Okay, I've got a question for you. When you go on a trip with your family, do you pack for yourself?
I do, because I think like one time 20 years ago my wife tried to pack for me, and we promised we'd never have that try that again.
You're still married, I take it.
Yeah, we're still married. So yeah, so I do, and I just got through packing, and I have a pretty good procedure. I know, we've got this great article, which I love the videos on this new blog post. You'll have to check that out. We'll make sure it's part of the video podcast as well, which with 10 things to pack. But yeah, I mean, I've always done. I haven't done the roll, bag, and sit. Usually, I just do the roll and put it in the bag. But I do like the rolling technique, and you'll have to check that out on the video on exactly how to do it. So. But yeah, no, I pack it all, and I have some medications I have to take along with me as well. So I'm pretty do that. And here's the mistakes I've made over the last few years. One time I forgot my sunglasses going to a sunny destination. Off to the fake sunglass store I went when I got to the destination because I needed sunglasses for a week. I've left my iPad on a plane recently,
Ooh.
so there went the charger with it. So I still had my phone, but I couldn't charge it. So again, as we have these lists, it seems some of it can seem like just a simple checklist, but it's good to sort of review what to take and what not to take. This particular trip, usually I download a bunch of movies for my daughter the night before because it takes a while to download some movies. I actually downloaded some of her programs off of our TiVo at the house so she would have some. She was with her friend, so I actually got them one of those splitters so they could both watch the iPad and have the same audio. So that's something also you might take together as far as a gadget's concerned.
I like to pack, put things in the same pockets. Like electronics will always go in this pocket. And like underwear will always go over on the far hand right side. Don't ask me why, I just do it. But sometimes that helps me, as I'm packing, look around and realize what I didn't pack. And or sometimes it doesn't work and I arrive at my destination without vital things I need. But at least we have a list.
It's fun. I mean, my wife has done a really great job. She for example, this time she had a pair of tennis shoes that were really wearing out. She was like, I want to take these and then I just won't bring them home, right?
That's good, yeah.
For example, so you have some extra room with that. I also, I'm part of pre-check, so usually I don't have to do anything, but on the way back, typically you have to take out your liquids or do something like that. But we all have sort of secret bigger liquid packages, right? It's not the 1 quart baggie, it's sort of the 1.5 quart, looks like a 1 quart baggie. So, and I've never been busted in line saying it's over a quart because it's clear all the way around, which is really what they need.
Well, I'm always worried about like cosmetic-y type things. I look at this thing and I think, is this 3.4 ounces or less? Do what you can.
Yeah, no, and I think the other thing too that's especially when you're traveling internationally is making sure your documents and passports and when you go to Mexico they give you a boarding card if you lose it during the week, you have to pay for a replacement coming back for that, and it easily falls out of your passport in many cases. So those are the kind of things that you really need to keep. You also want to. In this case with passports and whatnot, you want to certainly take a picture of those and send them up into the clouds, because if you do lose them, it's very handy to have at least pictures of what you had. You can get the numbers off as you go to the embassy. I've had that happen at least once.
Time for some questions.
Excellent. I like the questions part.
I know you do. We've got Miriam from Portland, Oregon, and she says, I'm trying not to check a bag on our next trip. So her first step is to buy a really good carry-on bag. And she says, generally I just use my school backpack, but that isn't going to work for this particular trip. She says she's seen some at Target for like $50, others for $500 online. Any ideas or tips on which carry-on roller bag to get? And she says, what do you use, Rick? Is any brand better than another?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of extremely expensive luggage, so I know that my bag, I didn't actually purchase myself, my wife bought it, but she got it at Kohl's. recently. It was a Samsonite, not to mention a brand name. Wasn't the most expensive brand. I actually have two different ones. One is sort of a little smaller if I know I'm going to Europe, because they have some different requirements over in Europe, so it's got to be slightly smaller. So I have sort of the small one, plus that same one for Europe also works as well, pretty well actually, on CRJ flights, Embraers, sort of the 50 and 70 seat jets. Also, the smaller one works there. But so I don't really, I mean, and I've replaced them I've had expensive ones in the past, and I've had and not expensive ones, and they all seem to break at the same.
Yeah,
That's the same pattern. I fly a lot, right? So I'm probably one of these people. If you're only flying a couple times a year, you probably get a lot more wear and tear out of your particular bag. But yeah, so that's what I would use, and I almost always, I have one of these sort of very simple Adidas sort of half backpack things, and I use that as my electronics bag. In fact, I was carrying my daughter's electronics, headphones. I always usually carry a tablet, and sometimes even I have a Surface Pro computer that I carry in there. A bunch of different cables and cords. It's like a electronics festival in that bag. I like having it with me. I like carrying it with me when I'm taking Uber to the airport. So it's not in the trunk or wherever it is, and it's pretty simple to put underneath the seat and carry around as well. So I usually carry both of those things, but I definitely would get a bag that, in my opinion, if you're spending more than a couple $100 for a bag, you're probably spending too much for your bag.
Okay, Rick, the next one is from Carol from East Orange, New Jersey, and she's got a pretty interesting question. She says, is there a way to tell whether a flight with a layover is one where we would not have to deplane? She says she's going to be traveling with her handicapped elderly father who cannot change planes. He can remain on a plane and, when the flight, and then just continue on. She doesn't know how to read that on various sites. What should she do?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. One of the things, well, first I was just thinking to myself, how would I go about doing this? In order to know whether or not you're going to change planes or not, or I mean, whether or not you're actually physically going to have to depart the plane, I think every airline's a little bit different, but there's a pretty easy way to tell that you absolutely will have to change planes. So if you look at the details of the summary, I know our site at FareCompare, if you look at the details, it has the equipment type. It'll tell you, 737 or Airbus or whatnot. And if you look at your connecting flight and you look at the two different flights, if those are completely different equipment types, you know for sure that you're going to have to change planes because clearly you're switching to a new type of plane. Also, you would also know that if you're also getting your seat assignments as well, you'd know that you were on a similar type plane. That's one way to know that you're on the same kind of plane. The only way I think you can do this is if it's the same flight number. So if it's like United Flight 91, going from point A to point B, and then Flight 91 going from point B to point C, especially if the connection time is right at 30 minutes or less in some cases. I know Southwest used to have a touch and go before the Wright Amendment where they'd hit Albuquerque and then go on to Las Vegas when they couldn't fly out to Las Vegas directly. And I think, as you mentioned previously, Southwest actually has sort of something on their website that says change of plane or not. You got to be careful with the word change of plane or no change of plane. Usually no change of plane means you may actually touch down, but you're not going to change your plane. That's probably what you're looking for. And then change of plane would be simply connecting, and you'd have to depart the actual flight. I don't think I've seen that on American, United, or Delta's website, which is 80% of the traffic in the U.S. So that would cover the top carriers anyway.
The only thing I would add is one time I was on a Southwest flight that did have a stop, and it said that you would not have to change planes, and yet when we got there, they told us, well, you're going to have to change your planes. I don't recall what the problem was. It might have been mechanical, might have been something else, but we did have to get off that plane and then get on another one. Now, I only bring this up because you never know. Stuff happens.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of rules and a lot of law. There's a lot of law around with handicap issues, and I don't know if there's a special person at the airline you can contact in these particular situations where you don't want to have to deplane. It sounds like that would be overly onerous. You only want to do that at the last time on the end. So definitely what I would do in this particular case, I'm going to do a little more research on this too, and we'll actually do a blog post because I like the post because I haven't actually had this question come up. And in fact, I've been doing this a long time. I can't remember this type of question coming up before, although I've been on planes that I didn't have to deplane before. So I definitely want to do a little more research. We'll put a post up on this and we'll talk about it the next podcast. But I think at this point, you can certainly rule out certain flights by looking at the equipment change. You can also probably rule in flights if it has the same flight number. But if there's a change in flight number, and the aircraft types are exactly the same, the question is, will you have to move to another gate? I think that's not assigned potentially until the very last minute, well before you buy your ticket, and I think that's where the problem lies, Ann.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate those questions, and if anybody else has some, please contact us at customer.service@farecompare.com.
Yeah, definitely, and we'll do a little more research on this. It's a great question. I get stumped every so often, so when I get stumped, it just gets me more curious to go find out what the answer is. By the way, Ann, more of the particular events in our Eventurist app, I think 120 or so now, up at the FareCompare.com. Just do FareCompare.com/app. It'll take you either to Google Play or the App Store on iOS. You can check that out there, and also you can catch the video podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and a variety of other platforms. So please feel free to join us there, and hopefully you'll come to FareCompare and do a little bit of shopping for summer. Just remember those dates in May and in June, and make sure you can slide in right before them.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Ann.